Before we start our episode, I have a disclaimer to make here. Now, the purpose of making this video is not to say that this view is correct, and whatever your view is wrong. That's not my purpose. My intention in sharing this is to tell you that there are other views out there that may be worth considering to help us better understand scriptures. It doesn't matter for me if these views were not originally mine. What is important is we learn from each other to help us better connect the data points in our minds. So let me remind you that this topic is a peripheral issue within the Christian community. This does not affect our salvation. It won't make you less of a believer if you do not get the answer right. This is not something that we should divide on as believers. If you happen to think that the views that I share are wrong, I suggest that you pray for me that I get it right. But in the meantime, this is episode 10. And we are going to try to answer the question, who was God talking to when he said, "Let us create man in our own image"? In episode 8, we have been talking about the sons of God, which is a status that is given to us by God. It is not given to animals. Along with that, it carries its function. The Bible talks about created in the image of God, or better understood, as created to be imagers of God. Image bearers, in short, representatives of God. In episode 7, we talk about Jesus is not the only son, but that he is unique among all the sons. This is not, I'm not saying that he's the brother of Satan or anything like that, okay? Jesus is called the express image of God, which means that he is the exact copy, perfect image bearer, perfect representative of God, perfect because he is God himself. Okay, so you can find that in Hebrews chapter 1, verse 3. In the previous episode, episode 9, we talk about the divine council. This is where the sons of God gather together to carry out the decrees of God. This is where the family meets and carry out the family business. Although God is completely capable of doing everything by himself, he wants his children to be involved in what he is doing. He wants his children to see what he is doing. So let me just refresh you on some of the passages. I'm going to post it here. So what you're going to do is just, you just pause my video, go through the passages. Okay, there are a couple of passages here that, that I shared in my last video. I'm just going to post it there for you to see. Okay, and then you can just press continue on once you're finished. Okay. With that, with what we have now, how can we better understand Genesis chapter 1, verse 26? It says here, God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the air, over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." So the question that comes into mind here, if you're a careful reader of the Bible, you're going to ask the question, who was God talking to when he said, "Let us create man in our own image, in our own likeness"? The presence of the plural pronoun us has generated speculations as to who God was talking to. But then you come to the next verse. The one who creates is singular. Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. It says here, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them." Now the pronoun becomes singular, which means God is the only one who created man in his own image. So there are a couple of options here on how to interpret this passage in Genesis chapter 1:26, which is, who was he talking to? The first option is to interpret this by saying that this is referring to his full attributes, full attribute and power, or what is referred to as the plural of majesty, which I don't think, for me, it's not coherent. Okay, so I'm just going to leave it at that. I don't want to dig too deep into that. Now, the second one, which is the prevalent one, would be the Trinity. This is the most acceptable interpretations for most Christians. I tried this many times to convince myself, but it just didn't work for me. Okay? I mean, why would God talk to himself? Didn't the other members of a Trinity knew what was going on, what was his plan? It's not as if God needs to be updated. I mean, I would understand that Jesus, when he was in the flesh, when he became man, that he needs to pray to God. He needs to talk to the Father, right? But at this time, he wasn't separated from the Father. He wasn't in the flesh, so to speak, right? So the next problem, the next problem is that the Jews during this time would not be thinking about the Trinity. We need to remember that although the Bible was written for us, for humanity, for all of us, it was written to them, to the Jews at that time, in that culture. So the author of the Old Testament would have to write it in such a way that they could easily relate to it, that they could easily understand it. So the concept of the Trinity is not clearly expressed in the Old Testament. The author would not be using this New Testament Trinitarian concept to communicate to his audience. The point is to get the message across to his readers. Okay. So, besides, another thing is that there's just too many assumptions going on that that doesn't quite connect well. Okay, I'm not saying this is wrong, but there must be something simpler, a simpler explanation, maybe something that you can see in the Bible, like verses, passages. Which brings me to my third option, which makes the most sense for me. I'm not saying it is right, but I think it's worthwhile to listen to it. I've had this suspicion before when I was a new Christian, but somehow I was told that it was the Trinity. Okay, but I am indebted to, again, Dr. Michael Heiser for bringing this out, for bringing this up. So here you go. The simple answer is that God is talking to the divine council, his heavenly sons, his heavenly image bearers. He is announcing that he wants to create humankind to become his image bearers here on earth, just like those who are in heaven, just like his heavenly sons. Okay. Now, Genesis 1, chapter 26, it says here, let us make man in our image after our likeness. Okay. Now, in order to test this theory or hypothesis, we need to check it, we need to make sure that the heavenly sons were there, the sons of God were there in the first place, because if they're not there, then the total idea, the total concept basically fails, right? So let's check out if there are any passages in the Bible that talks about that the angels or the sons of God or the heavenly assembly is there. So let's check out Job chapter 38, verse 4 to 6. Okay, now Job, God is challenging Job to a science quiz. If you read the book of Job, you're going to understand that he was challenging him. So so here you go. It says here, where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me, if you possess understanding. Who set its measurements, if you know, or who stretched a measuring line across it? On what were its bases set? Or who laid its cornerstone when the morning stars sang in chorus and all the sons of God shouted for joy? So obviously, the heavenly hosts, the sons of God, were there. Sons carry the image of their fathers. As parents, we often hear the comment that our children look very much like us. And rightly so, because they came from us. They resemble us. The same with God and his sons. His heavenly sons, as well as his earthly sons, resemble him. That is why he said, let us create man in our image, in our likeness. It's like saying, hey, big brother, I'm going to create little brothers for you, and they're going to look like us. Okay. And I would not be surprised if we have similarities with our heavenly siblings. Okay. Now let's move on to the next one. So, Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, it says here, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Okay. So after announcing to his heavenly family, he now creates man himself. Sort of like, check this out. Then the rest watch in excitement. So it's like daddy announcing to the family, let us create or let us make a tree house in the backyard. But then, since the kids are not capable of doing it, he goes to the tree. He climbs the tree. He makes the tree house by himself while the kids watch in excitement. Okay. So the next question is, as far as the God created in his own image, this is my answer, which is, the question is, why is it singular? I mean, think of, I think the explanation is simple. Only Jesus was the perfect imager. The rest are not. You know this. In your office, when you make a photocopy of something, you want to get the original one. You want a copy from the original copy, not a copy from another copy, because you're going to lose definition. You're going to lose a lot of the details, right? And even children, even when you create children, you don't, you know, parents do it, kids don't do it, right? But there is that resemblance between siblings, right? So So I think the simplest, most coherent answer to the question of who God was talking to, when he was creating man, when he said in Genesis 1:26 that he was let us create man in our own image, I think the answer is simple. He was talking to his heavenly sons. He was talking to the divine council. Okay. So okay, great. Now what? So let's answer the so what question. Genesis 1:28. God blessed them. God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it. Okay. Notice contained in these passages, in this verse, are the functions that we as God's earthly image bearers have. It says, be fruitful and multiply. The original intent of God is that Eden, God's sacred space, his household, spreads throughout the world, that his earthly sons who bears his image be spread all over the world. Scriptures connect fruit bearing with the spreading of the gospel. And our mandate is to bear fruit for the kingdom. It is to grow the family. It is to bring more people to Christ. And I think that is the lesson that we need to learn in this short excursion. If you want to learn more about the topics that we just discussed, I recommend the book by Dr. Michael Heiser, The Unseen Realm. Okay. So again, I'm not trying to say that this is the correct view, but do your own homework and come to your own conclusion. But I do hope this video is helpful to you. Until next time, please like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell so that you don't miss any of my videos. Thank you and God bless.